47 million Americans watched as Jasmine Crockett faced Ivanka Trump under the blinding red lights of Congress. One red envelope lay between them, containing 327 transactions that could tear a family empire apart. Cameras zoomed, hearts stopped, history waited. What secret was Ivanka hiding that made even her father's smile disappear? The live light bled across the marble like a national alarm. Jasmine Crockett stepped into the chamber. Her heels ticked a metronome that made the cameras hesitate. Every lens turned toward her. Every whisper died. The air inside the room was charged, sharp, metallic, ready to explode. Across the table sat Ivanka Trump, polished and motionless, the kind of calm only power can buy. Beside her, Donald Trump leaned back in his chair, arms folded, a grin carved onto his face, as if the outcome was already written. But when Jasmine reached the desk and placed one red envelope in front of them, that grin faltered. For the first time, power looked uncertain. The wax seal gleamed under the lights. Ivanka Foundation, financial transfers. The letters looked ordinary, but the silence they created was not. Every sound in the room grew louder, the faint buzz of the cameras, the ticking clock on the wall, the distant hum of air vents. Reporters froze behind glass panels. Technicians mouthed to each other, "Stay live, don't blink." The chair's gavel struck once. Bang. "Representative Crockett," the voice echoed, "you may proceed." Jasmine didn't rush. Her fingers hovered over the envelope like she was touching a fuse. The red seal reflected on her skin, glowing like a warning. "Behind this seal," she began, her tone calm and steady, "is not rumor, not speculation, but evidence, the kind that doesn't ask to be believed. It just exists." Ivanka's composure wavered, a barely noticeable twitch at the corner of her mouth. Donald's smile tightened. His knuckles tapped the desk in small, angry rhythms. The camera operators adjusted focus. Viewers at home leaned closer to their screens, feeling the weight of something irreversible about to begin. Jasmine lifted the silver letter opener, its blade catching the light like a slice of truth. The metal touched the wax, slow, deliberate, and the sound that followed cut through the silence, sharp and final, like a sentence being passed. Gasps filled the air. Hashtags were already forming across social media. She stopped with the flap half open, looked straight into the camera, and said quietly, every word landing like a gavel, "If your name sits in this ledger, pray the ink is still wet." The blade slid through the wax, and the seal gave way with a soft, final crack. Jasmine Crockett drew a slow breath as she pulled the red envelope open, letting the nation watch her fingertips tremble. Not from fear, but from precision. The chamber lights burned white, blinding, unforgiving. She slid the first document out, thick paper, embossed headers, columns of numbers that glimmered faintly under the glass dome ceiling. It wasn't just accounting, it was confession written in ink. Jasmine turned the first page, and the air itself seemed to tense with her. A list of purported program service expenses unfolded, entries neat, elegant, damning. Ritz-Carlton, Dubai, Leadership Development Retreat, $18,600 Mar-a-Lago Ballroom Rental, Empowerment Gala, $23,500 Capri Resort, Italy, Women's Networking Event, $1,400. Every line item was a monument to hypocrisy, stacked neatly like gravestones for truth. Jamie Raskin leaned forward, voice barely a whisper. These are from the donor fund." His words didn't echo. They sank. Ivanka's hand twitched. Her diamond bracelet clicked once against the table. Donald Trump leaned toward Jared Kushner, murmuring something no microphone could catch. But his jaw was tight now. His smirk was gone. Jasmine turned another page. The camera zoomed in, broadcasting the ink to millions of homes across the country. 172 entries under community support, she said evenly, but not a single receipt from a real community. Her voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. A man in the audience exhaled too loudly. It sounded like a gunshot in the stillness. Jasmine didn't flinch. She tapped one highlighted line with her pen. $12,800 billed as Educational Grant Review. The recipient? Mar-a-Lago catering services. A murmur spread through the press row like a fuse catching fire. Raskin blinked hard. "This isn't charity," he said, the mic catching the tremor. Jasmine looked at him, then back at Ivanka. "No," she replied softly. "It's indulgence. Wearing a halo." No one moved. No one dared breathe. And for the first time that morning, Ivanka's reflection on the polished table looked exactly like what it was. Cracked. The silence shattered. Elise Stefanik shot up from her chair, voice slicing through the tension like broken glass. "This is political theater," she shouted, her tone rising above the hum of the cameras. The outburst cracked the stillness, but Jasmine didn't even blink. She simply raised her hand, steady, deliberate, and lifted a single sheet from the pile. $23,500, Jasmine said slowly, her voice cutting each word with surgical precision. "Spent on what was described as an International Women's Empowerment Summit at Mar-a-Lago." She paused, eyes locked on Ivanka. "There's no guest list, no attendance report, no signed vendor receipt. Just champagne invoices and a catering note labeled Private Celebration." A ripple of whispers slithered through the gallery, reporters leaning forward as if their microphones could taste the tension. Ivanka shifted in her seat, her smile gone now. Only the faint movement of her throat as she swallowed hard. Trump's fingers tapped once against the table, a hollow, irritated rhythm. Elise tried again, voice trembling this time. "You're twisting data to humiliate this family." Jasmine turned toward her, calm but lethal. "Humiliation?" she said. "Tell that to the single mother in Detroit who applied for funding and never got a response, while this so-called summit poured taxpayer donations into imported champagne." The chamber gasped. Even the lights seemed to flicker. Jamie Raskin leaned forward, whispering something the microphones barely caught. "My God, it's all real." Jasmine nodded once, never looking away from Ivanka. "You called it empowerment," she said softly, "but the only thing it empowered was your brand." The sentence hung in the air like a slow detonation. No one moved. Reporters stopped typing. The sound tech's hand froze midair. Ivanka looked down, her reflection fractured by the polished surface of the desk. Donald Trump stared straight ahead, jaw tight, no words left to twist. And as the red live light blinked across the nation, the truth stood naked under its glare. Undeniable, burning, and merciless. When the curtain is finally pulled back, even the most powerful start praying for the lights to go out. The chamber lights dimmed as the screen behind Jasmine flickered to life. For a moment, all anyone could hear was the faint crackle of the speakers. Then a figure appeared, face blurred, voice distorted, posture rigid like someone afraid the air itself might betray them. The words came out uneven, trembling, but each one struck with the precision of a bullet. "We were told," the witness said, "as long as it looks charitable, no one checks the books." A collective murmur rippled through the room, then vanished as quickly as it came. Jasmine stood still, her eyes fixed on the projection, hands clasped like a surgeon waiting for the incision to finish. She didn't move, didn't speak, just let the distortion echo through the chamber until it became unbearable. Even the air conditioning seemed to fall silent. From the second row, Ivanka shifted slightly, her chair creaking in the hush. Trump leaned toward his lawyer, whispering through clenched teeth, but no one could hear the words. All microphones were locked on the screen, on the disembodied voice confessing to the nation that the charity's integrity was a performance, not a principle. Then Jasmine pressed a button on her tablet. The audio changed. The distortion disappeared. A new voice came through, clear, feminine, confident, and horrifyingly familiar. "Let's reframe the event," the voice said. "If we call it mentorship, we can file it under development expenses. It'll qualify for a tax deduction." The words cut through the silence like a blade through glass. It was Ivanka Trump's voice, not alleged, not edited, not denied. The sound reverberated through every corner of the chamber, through every camera lens transmitting live to millions. Reporters froze. One even dropped his pen. It hit the floor with a metallic clink that felt like thunder. Ivanka's face drained of color, her perfectly arranged composure collapsing one micro-expression at a time. Donald Trump turned sharply, eyes wide, as if seeing the walls close in. Jasmine didn't gloat. She simply looked at Ivanka and said, in a voice calm enough to chill the room, "When a lie has a voice, it no longer needs a mask." The screen behind Jasmine flared again, flooding the chamber in a cold, sterile glow. A cascade of emails appeared, lines of text, timestamps, and names scrolling like the heartbeat of a guilty machine. Jasmine's voice cut through the silence, steady, unflinching. Internal correspondence from the Ivanka Foundation, date-stamped, verified, and cross-referenced. Her fingertip traced the first message projected 10 feet high. Delete after upload. Then another followed. Fake donor profiles ready, keep originals offsite. Gasps rippled through the audience like waves colliding against stone. The sound of clicking cameras echoed under the marble dome, as each line revealed the anatomy of deception. Jasmine didn't look at the screen. She already knew every word by heart. Instead, she studied Ivanka's face. The stillness that wasn't calm anymore, just paralysis. She tapped the next slide. A flight manifest appeared, complete with seat numbers and timestamps. "Here," Jasmine said quietly, "is the itinerary for the so-called Women's Development Delegation. The same week, the foundation reported $42,000 in domestic outreach grants." She zoomed in on a column of destinations. Paris, Capri, Dubai. The audience murmured, their disbelief morphing into something darker. Anger. Trump shifted in his seat, his jaw tightening as Jasmine advanced to the next exhibit. "This," she continued, "isn't just a timeline. It's choreography." She pointed to the overlapping entries: email sent, jet booked, payment processed. The ledger called it charity. The receipt spelled vacation, Jasmine said. Elise Stefanik fidgeted, her hands clasped too tightly. For the first time, her voice didn't rise to interrupt. She just stared at the table, her reflection trembling in the polished wood. Trump's knuckles whitened as he gripped the edge of the desk, the grin long gone from his face. Jasmine turned to the panel, her tone dropping lower, colder. "They didn't hide the money," she said. "They dressed it up." The sentence hung in the air like a verdict. Then she took a single step closer to the microphone, her gaze locking on Ivanka, whose eyes darted from page to page like someone watching her own downfall projected in 4K. "If charity," Jasmine said softly, "is just theater, then tell me, who's selling the tickets?" The lights dimmed again, and the screen behind Jasmine came alive. The footage flickered once, then stabilized. A grand ballroom drenched in gold light, violins playing, champagne glasses clinking. At the center of it all stood Ivanka Trump, flawless and glowing, raising her glass among a circle of billionaires. Laughter rippled through the speakers, the kind that sounds like silk and arrogance woven together. Jasmine didn't move. She let the video roll. The audience watched Ivanka toast, the words barely audible but unmistakably smug. "To empowerment, because luxury inspires leadership." The room went dead silent. Then Jasmine's voice cut in, slow, low, devastating. "That night," she said, "while this gala poured $12,000 into imported champagne, babies in Mississippi were being turned away from empty store shelves. No formula, no help, just headlines." The chamber erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Flashes exploded like lightning. A wave of outrage rolled through the gallery, through the phones and live feeds, through every living room watching across the country. Jasmine stood motionless at the center of it, the storm raging around her. Trump slammed a fist on the table, the sound cracking through the chaos. "Turn it off," he barked. "This is fake. Turn it off." His voice carried the desperation of someone realizing the broadcast wasn't under his control anymore. The technicians hesitated because the order didn't come from him. The feed stayed live. On screen, Ivanka's laughter echoed again, crystal clear now, magnified by the chamber acoustics. Jasmine finally looked up, her eyes locking on Ivanka's. "Tell them," she said quietly, "how much justice costs per glass." Ivanka's lips parted, but no sound came out. Only the video kept playing, replaying that single toast over and over until it felt less like celebration and more like confession. The screen finally went black, but the sound, the laughter, the glass, the emptiness lingered in the air like smoke that refused to fade. The video may fade, but that sound will haunt every room where lies were born. The chamber felt tighter than before, the kind of air that clings to your throat and waits for a spark. Jared Kushner rose from his seat, face pale but composed, his voice carefully measured. "Mr. Chairman, I request a recess." Jasmine didn't let him finish. "Denied." The single word cracked like a whip. Then colder. "You can delay meetings, Mr. Kushner. You cannot delay the truth." She pressed a key on her tablet, and the main screen erupted with motion. Rows of corporate documents, wiring records, and bank filings, each stamped with unfamiliar names. Charity of Rachel, Trust of David, Legacy of Hope. The words scrolled past in sterile fonts, beautiful in their precision, damning in their symmetry. 3 humanitarian entities funneled disbursements to a single offshore endpoint. "Swift reference on file," Jasmine said. Jamie Raskin leaned in. "Where?" Jasmine turned toward him, her eyes glinting in the white light. "Cayman Islands," she said, then paused, letting the silence stretch until it broke. "And one more, directly routed through Mar-a-Lago's holding company." A gasp rippled through the chamber, as if someone had opened a window into a hurricane. Reporters lunged for their phones. Cameras whirred. Ivanka's expression froze in place, half dignity, half dread. Donald Trump's face turned crimson. He slammed his palm against the table, the sound echoing like gunfire. "That's a lie," he barked, voice cracking. "You're framing my family." Jasmine didn't flinch. "These are your daughter's companies," she said evenly. "Her signatures, her board approvals, her transfers. If it's a frame, Mr. Trump, then she built it herself." The crowd erupted, voices colliding with the metallic hum of microphones. The chair tried to gavel the room into order, but the word "live" glowed on every camera, pulsing like a heartbeat no one could stop. Jasmine closed the file, her tone as sharp as broken glass. "You built walls of secrecy around your wealth," she said, "but walls don't protect lies. They just make the fall louder." Trump's hands trembled. His mouth opened to speak, but no sound came out. The empire he built on silence had just met someone who refused to be quiet. The noise of the crowd faded as Jasmine reached into her folder and pulled out a stack of folded letters, edges worn from being handled too many times. The room grew still again. "These," she said quietly, "are from the people who believed in the Ivanka Foundation, the ones who waited." Her voice didn't rise. It descended, soft and heavy, until every syllable hit like a heartbeat. She unfolded the first letter, paper trembling just slightly between her fingers. "Dear Ms. Trump," she read aloud, "I'm a single mother from Baton Rouge. My daughter's school roof collapsed last winter. I applied for the Women's Empowerment Grant. We never heard back, but we still kept hope." The words hung in the air like smoke, fragile, human, impossible to ignore. The second letter followed. "I'm a teacher in rural Ohio. We were told the foundation would help us buy new lab equipment for our students. Months passed. We got silence. Then we saw the gala on TV. A ripple of unease moved through the room. A camera operator lowered his lens, almost ashamed to film. Jasmine took a breath and opened the last letter, her eyes scanning the handwriting that leaned slightly to the right. "I'm a veteran. We were promised community grants for housing. Instead, we got emails asking for donations." She looked up, her tone unshaken. "Do you know what it feels like to serve your country and get ignored by the people who claim to serve humanity?" A whisper came from the back of the gallery, trembling, barely audible. "We believed her." The sentence broke midair. The camera swung around, capturing faces streaked with tears. Ivanka's chin dropped to her chest. The shimmer in her earrings caught the light, but her eyes stayed hidden. Donald Trump looked away. Jasmine's hand tightened around the papers. Her voice dropped to a whisper that could still cut steel. "You took their faith," she said, "and sold it for a tax break." She laid the letters down, flat and precise, as if returning them to their owners. "You turned their pain," she finished, "into your profit." Jasmine's hand hovered above the final document, like someone about to detonate a truth that could not be buried again. The light seemed to dim by instinct, the air drawing tight around the hearing table. Then she raised the page high enough for every lens to see. the paper trembling not from her, but from the collective breath of a nation about to learn what power looks like when it breaks. "This," she said clearly, her voice carrying the weight of every letter typed on that memo, "is an internal audit note from the Ivanka Foundation's Risk Division." She paused, letting the anticipation crawl up every spine in the room. It reads, "Continued misuse of charitable funds may result in criminal investigation. Immediate compliance recommended." The words landed like a verdict. For a second, no one moved. The cameras kept rolling, their red tally lights blinking like heartbeats in the dark. Jamie Raskin leaned forward, whispering, "Good God!" Then the explosion came. Donald Trump slammed his palm on the table, the sound echoing through the marble chamber like a gunshot. "This is a circus," he roared, voice cracking under the weight of panic disguised as rage. "You people are disgusting." The gavel pounded once, twice, but he was already standing, chair screeching back, face red, eyes wild. Ivanka tried to say something. Her lips moved, no sound came out. Reporters surged, microphones shot forward, the moment turning raw and uncontrollable. "This hearing is a witch hunt," Trump shouted again, his words colliding with the thunder of camera shutters. He turned, muttering to his aides, and stormed toward the exit. 47 seconds. That's how long it took for the most powerful man in the room to flee it. 47 seconds that played over and over on screens from coast to coast, in diners, living rooms, and hospital waiting areas. When the door slammed shut, the only sound left was the faint hum of the broadcast feed still live. Jasmine stood perfectly still, eyes on the empty chair where he had sat. "You can walk out," she said softly, "but the evidence stays." 47 seconds of silence were enough to destroy 40 years of power. The door Trump had slammed still rattled on its hinges when the echoes finally began to die. For a long moment, no one moved. The space he left behind felt larger than the chamber itself. The air smelled of sweat, hot metal, and the static of microphones left open to nothing. Ivanka Trump sat frozen, her eyes fixed on the table's reflection, as though it might swallow her whole. The red light on the camera continued to pulse, recording a silence so complete it felt engineered. Jamie Raskin broke it first, clearing his throat, voice low but steady. "Mr. Chairman, I move that these materials be referred to the Department of Justice for immediate review." The words struck like a verdict read aloud in a church. Across the aisle, Elise Stefanik gathered her folders with slow, mechanical movements. No one looked at her. No one needed to. She slipped the papers into her bag, stood, and walked toward the exit without a sound. The click of her heels was the only evidence that the room still contained life. Raskin's motion was seconded. The gavel came down once, one clean hit that echoed through the cameras broadcasting to every television in America. Staffers stared at the empty chair at the end of the table where Trump had sat only minutes earlier. The leather was still warm, the water glass still half full. Jasmine didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her expression was unreadable, half exhaustion, half triumph, as she closed the red folder and rested both hands on it. For the first time, the chamber was hers alone. The journalists stopped whispering. The aides stopped moving. The light over the main camera flickered once, then steadied, capturing a tableau of power turned to dust. Ivanka unmoving, Elise gone, Raskin writing, and Jasmine standing in the wreckage of silence that truth had built. In that moment, the sound of justice wasn't noise at all. It was absence. Across America, the footage replayed on every screen. In bars, in classrooms, in nursing homes, the same image flickered again and again. Donald Trump storming out while Jasmine Crockett stood motionless under the glare of the red live light. The anchor's voice trembled over the broadcast. This is history unfolding. A former president's legacy, shaken by one woman and one envelope. In a diner in Ohio, a group of veterans leaned toward the TV, their coffee long gone cold. One of them, a man with silver hair and a folded flag tattoo on his wrist, muttered, "That's the first time I've seen real accountability in my lifetime." His friend just nodded, eyes never leaving the screen. In a Texas classroom, a history teacher wiped her eyes behind thick glasses as her students watched in stunned silence. "Remember this," she whispered. "You're watching courage." News networks scrambled for commentary, voices overlapping in disbelief. One pundit said, "She didn't just question the powerful, she cornered them." Another added, "A black congresswoman from Dallas just made the world's most influential family blink." The phrase caught fire, spreading across headlines and social feeds until it became its own rallying cry. Outside Washington, crowds began to gather. Protesters, supporters, skeptics, all drawn by the same magnetic sense that something irreversible had just happened. Posters appeared overnight with Jasmine's silhouette under the words, "Calm is a weapon." Her face was printed on banners, her quote replayed in endless loops. "You can delay meetings, you cannot delay the truth." In Harlem, a group of churchgoers stood outside after service, listening to the replay through an open window. "She didn't shout," one woman said softly. "She didn't need to," a pastor nodded. "Power isn't volume," he said. "It's conviction." Back in Washington, Jasmine's team watched from a dim office, the glow of the screens washing over their tired faces. Outside, sirens echoed faintly, a reminder that the city never sleeps. But for once, it seemed to be listening. And somewhere, in millions of homes across the nation, people realize that history doesn't always roar when it changes. Sometimes it simply stands, calm, unshaken, and unstoppable. The press room blazed with camera flashes as Jasmine Crockett stepped up to the podium. The backdrop behind her still carried the faint red glow from the congressional chamber, a reminder that the world was still watching. Microphones crowded toward her like a forest of black metal stems, every lens aimed at one woman who hadn't raised her voice once, yet had shaken the country to its core. She looked straight ahead, unflinching. The chatter, the clicking, the rustle of notepads all fell away. Her voice came low, deliberate, precise. "This isn't revenge," she began, each word carved clean and heavy. "This is responsibility." The line hit like a wave. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. She waited, letting the silence bloom until it became part of the statement itself. Jasmine leaned closer to the mic. "If the truth makes you uncomfortable," she continued, eyes sweeping over the rows of reporters, "be grateful. It means it's finally working." Shabranino. The sentence landed with surgical calm. No shout, no tremor, only certainty. Around her, flashes erupted like lightning, freezing her expression into 100 versions of defiance. A reporter in the front row whispered, "She's rewriting the playbook." Another murmured, "No, she's closing it." Jasmine took a step back, hands steady on the podium. "What happened here today," she said, "wasn't about one family or one scandal. It was about the American idea that no one, no matter how wealthy, can outrun accountability forever." The crowd stirred. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere distant, as if echoing her tone. Jasmine gave one final look into the sea of cameras, the nation's mirror, and nodded once, calm and absolute. And as the press lights flared white across her face, she left them with a single truth that would outlive the broadcast. Empires don't fall when walls crack. They fall when truth finally finds a microphone. Breaking news exploded across every network like a shockwave through the airwaves. The Chiron flashed red on every screen. "Justice in motion." Anchors spoke fast, their voices trembling with the weight of history. "The Department of Justice has officially launched a criminal investigation into the Ivanka Foundation," one said breathlessly. "The IRS confirms that all related accounts have been frozen effective immediately." Outside the DOJ headquarters, reporters swarmed like storm chasers, their cameras flashing in rapid bursts of white light. A veteran journalist muttered into his mic, "I've covered politics for 30 years, and I've never seen the Trump empire flinch like this." On Wall Street, traders stared at the scrolling headlines as markets dipped, whispers moving through phone lines like static. In a quiet congressional office, Jasmine Crockett stood before a television, the glow of the breaking banner painting her face in shades of crimson and blue. She didn't smile. She didn't cheer. She simply watched, calm, still, certain, the way a person does when the storm they warned about finally arrives. Her assistant turned toward her, hesitant. "Congresswoman, would you like to make a statement?" Jasmine shook her head once. "Not yet," she said softly. Across the country, news commentators replayed the footage from the hearing. Her stillness, her composure, her refusal to flinch. "She didn't shout. She didn't grandstand," one analyst said live on air. but she made the most powerful system in America move. Another replied, sometimes justice doesn't roar, sometimes it whispers, and everyone still hears it. Behind Jasmine, phones rang, screens blinked with incoming requests, and aides scrambled to keep up with the flood of media attention. But she remained unmoved, her eyes fixed on the words running across the screen. Outside, the city roared. Sirens, traffic, the hum of a nation waking up to consequence. Inside, the room stayed perfectly still, holding the rarest sound of all, the sound of justice finally beginning to move. Cameras panned across America, the aftermath that numbers never show. Abandoned schools stood like ghosts of promises left unkept, their playgrounds overrun with weeds. Community centers that once bore banners of empowerment were shuttered, their signs sun-bleached, their doors chained. The newscasters spoke over the images, their tones hushed. This is where the money should have gone. Jasmine Crockett watched those same screens from the back seat of a black sedan, rolling through a small Mississippi town. The car stopped outside a crumbling brick building that used to be a daycare. She stepped out quietly, her heels clicking against cracked pavement. No cameras followed now. Only a local reporter and a handful of townspeople who had waited, not to protest, not to praise, but simply to be seen. She shook every hand that reached for hers, pausing to meet each person's eyes. There was a veteran in a faded jacket, a young mother holding a child on her hip, a teacher who still carried a folder full of unfunded grant letters. Jasmine listened, said little, and when she spoke, it was with the same steadiness that once silenced Congress. You weren't forgotten, she said softly. You were ignored. There's a difference, and that difference ends now. A grandmother stepped forward, her voice trembling. You gave us our voice back, she said. The crowd fell silent, the air heavy with the truth of it. Jasmine smiled, not the polished smile of politics, but something small, human, tired, and real. As she turned to leave, the cameras caught a single image that would replay across the nation. Jasmine walking past a row of broken windows, her reflection fractured but still upright, still moving forward. In living rooms across America, people watching that moment understood. Justice doesn't always rebuild overnight. Sometimes it starts with a handshake, a promise kept, and one woman refusing to look away. The rain had already started by the time Jasmine Crockett stepped in front of the cameras one last time. Thunder rolled somewhere over the Capitol dome, the sky a heavy curtain of gray and light. Reporters stood beneath umbrellas, their microphones trembling under the wind, waiting for the final words that would close a chapter and open another. Jasmine didn't use notes. She didn't need them. Her voice carried over the storm, low, steady, cutting clean through the noise. This is not the end of a family, she said, rain sliding down her face like the last traces of exhaustion leaving her body. It's the beginning of the truth. The microphones caught every word, but it was her silence afterward that made America stop breathing. Behind her, the Capitol steps gleamed under the rain, slick and bright, as if history itself was being washed and rewritten. She descended slowly, each step echoing with the weight of everything that had been uncovered. The ledgers, the lies, the letters, the silence finally broken. At the base of the stairs, she paused and turned toward the sky, her red folder pressed against her chest. The storm didn't intimidate her. It crowned her. Across the country, millions watched from screens glowing in the dark, in diners, in hospitals, in living rooms that had seen too many empty promises. No one spoke. No one dared to. It wasn't victory they saw in her face. It was something rarer. Clarity, resolve, peace that only truth can buy. The feed faded to black as thunder swallowed the Capitol's skyline, but her final words stayed long after the broadcast ended. History won't remember the scandal. It will remember the woman who refused to look away. Truth may arrive slowly, but it always finds its way, because justice doesn't need to shout. It only needs someone brave enough to stand and not look away. Will you choose silence in the face of wrong, or take one step forward to defend what's right? Truth is the storm that cleanses a nation, and courage is the light that survives it. If this story stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Hit like, share, and subscribe so the truth can keep moving forward. Let every voice that dares to speak become part of that light. This story was created for inspiration and reflection. It does not depict or represent any individual or organization. Viewer interpretation and discussion are encouraged, but final responsibility rests with each audience member. Now it's your turn. When truth stands in the rain, will you turn away or stand with it? Tell me in the comments. I'll be listening.